Hi everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter, and I am here with a card project for you today. I'm going to be using this holiday and New Year's stamp set. This is part of the November release from Studio Calico. It's one of the stamp set add-ons, and I'm going to be using that stamp at the top that says Celebrate, and I'm going to be embossing it on this red cardstock. So I'm starting out by prepping the cardstock with a little EK Success powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up the stamp, which I have mounted on my clear block there, in some Versamark ink. And I'm using some white embossing powder. I stamped this more towards the bottom. It's kind of going to be, the focus is kind of going to be shifted towards the bottom on this card. So I just kind of stamped it like a banner across this card on the bottom. And once I get it stamped, then I can go ahead and add my white embossing powder. Now I added this on there, and then I did have a couple little stray pieces of embossing powder. So I just cleaned those up with a dry brush. And then I went ahead and heat set that sentiment, and you can see how nice and bright white that is on that red cardstock. It's such a cool effect. So I love the way that looked, and I thought I would add this Happy Holidays stamp right beneath it, and I want to emboss that as well, but I'm going to be using the leaf embossing powder, the Wow leaf colored. So I just thought I'd make sure that it lined up well. And then I mounted it on my clear block. And once again, I inked that up in some Versamark ink and stamped that right below that Celebrate stamp. And then I covered it with the leaf, it's the Wow, no, it's the Zing leaf embossing powder here. And then I just used a piece of scratch paper to funnel that back into my bottle. And then I heat set that. Now I was careful not to kind of go over that white area that I had already melted. I just kind of kept my heat centered on that lower portion of the sentiment. I thought it would be fun to add some twine kind of coming around through this sentiment piece here. So I just took my little craft knife here and I'm cutting right along. There's like these little gaps or like lines in that sentiment. So I just cut right along those. And then I'm just taking some twine here. This has a little bit of gold in it, and I'm just putting the end through a dental floss threader. And that just helps me get my twine threaded through this card. And I'm going to go around it a few times so you can kind of see me working this through. It's easier to thread a dental floss threader than it is a needle. So you could also use a large kind of embroidery needle for this, but I find that these dental floss threaders work great, and I got them for free from the orthodontist. So what do you know? So once I got that looped through a few times, I went ahead and tied a bow there at that right side of the, or I'm sorry, the left side, my other right, the left side of the card, and then snipped off the ends there. And then, of course, because it's never right on the first try, I had to fuss with that bow a little bit and get it just where I want it. Now, if you want it to kind of stay in position, you can use a little matte, Ranger matte medium and kind of glue that in place. Now I thought it would be fun to add a little bit of texture to this card and kind of block in that sentiment area. So I'm just taking my scoreboard and my scoring tool. I added 3 scored lines above the sentiment and then 1 below it. And that just kind of sets off and sets apart that area where all the stamping is and adds a little texture. I grabbed some pattern paper from the Walden card kit, and I'm just cutting some little kind of banner shapes and random shapes here to kind of put a little grouping of color. I just thought the top part needed some more interest. So there are 2 pattern papers here from the Walden kit, and then some green cardstock from Stampin' Up! That just kind of coordinates with that leaf embossing powder that I used. And I'm just fussing with the sizes, and you can see I hand cut these. They are not perfect by any means, but it just adds a little bit more weight to the top of the card because the bottom of the card was just feeling so heavy. Once I got those kind of all where I wanted them, I just added a little tape runner adhesive and then stuck them down to the top of the card and arranged them there. But to really secure them, I'm going to use my tiny attacher. But I thought I would try out something that I saw on the Studio Calico message boards, and that was coloring your tiny attacher staples with a paint pen. I can't say that this was the best result for me, but I went ahead and tried it with this gold paint pen, then loaded it into my tiny attacher and then just stapled those onto the top. But I did find something that works really good, and I will share that in a video with you soon for coloring your staples gold. Because if you're like me, you want to have gold staples to go. You know, you can't, there's no way you can use a silver staple on a card when you've used gold, right? Okay, anyway. So I added some foam adhesive to the back of this card front, and then I decided I wanted even more texture and interest at the top of that card. So this little dot stamp is actually from the wreath stamp set. It's also from the November release of the from Studio Calico, and I'm just making kind of like a polka dot pattern at the top with some Versamark ink. So it's a tone on tone. It adds it adds texture without, making it too heavy at the top of the card. And I'm just staggering these polka dots along the top of there and just creating my own little pattern. It's not perfect, but you can see that that result is really fun there. So I decided that that was probably where I wanted to end up with this card. So I cut a piece of craft cardstock, scored it at 5.5. It's cut to 4.25 by 11. So this is a top folding A2 card. Scored it with my scoreboard and then used my bone folder to make a nice big crease. And then I thought maybe this needs 2 layers of foam adhesive. So I went ahead and added a second layer of foam adhesive all over the back of that card front. And I matted this on a piece of that same green cardstock that I used up at the top of that card as well. This just helps kind of separate it and help it jump off of this craft cardstock when I get it on there. And then I used my tape runner adhesive to adhere that whole piece onto my craft card base. And that completes my card for today. This would be a really fun card to kind of mass produce. There's not a whole lot of, consumables involved in this, so it would be a great card to mass produce for the holiday season. You can find links to all the products I used in this project over at my blog, as well as in the description at YouTube, and please visit me at my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a fabulous day.